Friends, this morning we come to the end of our journey exploring the 12 steps. As today we reflect on that final step. Hopefully this has been a helpful journey exploring a program that you may have heard about, but never really knew what it was about. The original 12-step program, as we've spoken before, was written originally for recovering alcoholics, but over the decades, its usefulness in bringing change in people's lives has been shown to be valuable in all sorts of other spheres. Today, there are 12-step programs for people who experience drug addiction, Narcotics Anonymous, for those who struggle with cluttering and hoarding, Clutterers Anonymous, for those who repeatedly get themselves into debt, Debtors Anonymous. For those who struggle with finding themselves repeatedly in dysfunctional relationships, Codependents Anonymous. And for those who struggle with food, Overeaters Anonymous and Food Addicts Anonymous. There's also a 12-step program for those who overwork, called Workaholics Anonymous. What really strikes me is how rigorous this 12-step program has been. And that those who have embarked on it, one needs to hold in high admiration, especially those who've been able to see it through to the end. It's a program that takes an enormous amount of courage, clearly. And if you know someone who's been through the 12-step program, hopefully you have a new appreciation and admiration for the rigorous journey that they've been through and continue, because it's a lifelong journey. Perhaps what has been missing in these last 12 weeks is a recognition that the 12 steps are best not done simply privately as individuals. It was designed to be done with the support of a mentor and also the support of a group. And so it's not a self-help program. It is built on the premise that journey towards wholeness and recovery in all spheres of life is best done with the help of others and with the help of God or some conception of a higher power. And so we come to step 12, which reads, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to others and to practice these principles in all of our affairs. What does it mean to have a spiritual awakening? It sounds awfully religious, says Trevor Hudson. One gets the sense of some otherworldly vision or of strange lights or ethereal music. But Trevor says a spiritual awakening can be defined quite simply. He says it is about coming alive in some area of our life where previously there was a deadness. And the shape of this can be different for different people, depending on the nature of their own circumstances. For some, it might be about coming to a deeper acceptance and humble awareness of who we really are, with all of our gifts as well as our weaknesses. For some, it might be the joy of experiencing more positive emotions, or the discovery of a newfound freedom in our capacity for choice, no longer feeling like hopeless victims trapped in our past mistakes, but the joy of discovering the ability to move forward towards a more positive future. Or the experience of new life in our relationships and a newfound ability to relate to people more openly and freely. For others, spiritual awakening might simply be a newfound ability to appreciate the very gift of life itself. As Trevor writes, to appreciate the sound of the wind in the trees, to smell the scent of a beautiful flower, to enjoy the taste of a good meal, to delight in the playfulness of a puppy. Our senses are alive and awake again because we have begun to see through the fog of negativity, guilt, and shame and self-centeredness that we may have lived with for so long. For some, perhaps, a spiritual awakening carries with it indeed a deeper sense of divine love, that life with a capital L is good, and that each of us is deeply loved by something and someone much greater than ourselves. Trevor asks, can you identify with any of these? And if you can, then you have had a spiritual awakening of some kind. And so what the 12-step program suggests is that a spiritual awakening is not just about some kind of supernatural experience, although for some it might include that, but it is rooted in the ordinary reality of ordinary life and relationships. The second half of step 12 is about sharing the positivity of this spiritual awakening, this thing that we've experienced with others. Having had a spiritual awakening, it reads, as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to others. I find it interesting that this encouragement to carry this message to others only comes at the very end of a rigorous and testing process. It's one of the last parts of the 12-step program, not one of the first, for good reason. Because by the 12th step, all participants would have come to a far humbler and more mature view of themselves, although there may still be a great journey ahead. But they still have a greater awareness of our common human frailties. And so with that in mind, some of the best advice that I've heard about sharing any religious or spiritual message with others comes from St. Francis of Assisi, who is reported to have said, preach the good news at all times, and if necessary, use words. This is echoed by Richard Templer in his book, The Rules of Life. Rule 1 of his rules for life is keep it under your hat. In introducing his rules for life, he writes, you are about to discover ways to become more positive, happier, more successful in everything you do. So there's no need to say anything to anyone about it. Keep it quiet. No one likes a smart ass. First rule, keep it under your hat. There may well be times when you want to talk to other people, he says, about what you're doing, because quite naturally you want to share it with somebody. And then he says, let them find out for themselves. If you tell them, they will surely shy away. And quite rightly so. We all hate being preached at, he says. He says it's a bit like when someone gives up smoking and suddenly finds a new and healthier way of living and simply has to convert all their old smoking friends. The trouble is, they aren't yet ready to quit. And so the first rule, says Richard Templer, in his rules for life, is quite simply don't preach, don't propagate, don't try to convert or shout from the rooftops or even mention this, he says. He suggests that no one really wants to know, so keep quiet. Perhaps Richard Templer's approach is a little radical, but it should make all of us a little more cautious in trying to convert anyone too quickly. Let them see something different within us. And perhaps when they begin to ask why, that may be the best time to speak. Which is really what St. Francis is saying when he said, preach the good news at all times, and only when necessary, use words. Finally, just in case we think step 12 is the end of the program, it reminds us to continue practicing everything we have learned. It says, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to others and to practice these principles in all our affairs. The last phrase of the 12 steps: keep practicing these principles in all your affairs. In closing, Trevor Hudson writes, the 12-step program contains principles that show us how to live well. And if we put them into practice in all of our affairs, we will experience tremendous benefits and blessings. We will experience a growing sense of sanity and serenity. We'll begin to have small victories over those weaknesses that were once sabotaging our relationships and lives. We will move beyond being superficial in our relationships with others and with God, he says. And in the words of the last line of one of the short stories in the big book of AA, he says, at last, we will be at peace with ourselves and with others and with God. May God bless you. I really hope this has been a valuable journey that's deepened your own journey with God, and have a sense of the ongoing work that all of us need to be doing in our lives. God bless. Amen.